What's up, everybody? Welcome into Group Chat Sports. This is Group Chat Football Live. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for the latest news in the recruiting world, transfer portal, coaching movement, and much more across college football. I am Peter Ariz alongside D Money here, and it's a big week, man. This is what we live for. The transfer portal opens on Wednesday, so we're going to get into some speculation. Of course, Nico, Tennessee, that marriage is over. That was our last video we did last week. Before all of this became official, we kind of speculated this was trending the way that it was. So we'll get into that, possible landing spots for him. Taking a look at some of the top needs for a couple of top programs in the country, Georgia and Ohio State. But let's start, D, in the high school ranks here as Wisconsin. Really nice pickup at the quarterback position out of California.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of guy that we love to talk about on this show with Ryan Hopkins. High 3-star, number 29 quarterback nationally, Newport Beach, California, Mater Dei High School. You may have heard of it, throwing to guys like Chris Henry, Caden Dixon-White, some of the best receivers in the country, one of the best, if not the best programs in the country. So he's won a lot of games, chose the Badgers over Missouri, Cal, Duke, and I really like the profile here, Pete. So, we like to talk about multiple sports and athletic backgrounds. It's kind of our thing we love to focus on. 10.97 in the 100 meters, and that's as a younger guy. It's not even probably his fastest time. So this is a legitimate dual threat, kind of a 4-4 type of quarterback. He's run in games. He's not just a guy that just runs on the track. He has a feel for the position when it comes to being that playmaker. His sister is a star soccer player. She went to Virginia, plays for the National Women's Soccer League, the North Carolina Courage. His dad got drafted by the Texas Rangers in baseball. So some athletic genes here. And as you can see on these highlights, man, this is a dynamic playmaker. It's interesting. We're so used to Wisconsin with these big pro-style quarterbacks, right, that backup type quarterbacks in the NFL, really good college players, just really reliable players running that offense. This is a whole different profile, more of a runner. And to me, it's an interesting profile because even though he's a California kid, you put him in Wisconsin with that big physical offensive line. Maybe it's hard to pass because it's windy, it's cold. You can run the ball not only with your running backs, which we know Wisconsin is going to do better than anybody, but with your quarterback. It's a look for a team that's been so running focused in their history. To add a running quarterback to the mix, I think is an exciting little wrinkle there.
Yeah, and it is interesting that this guy he's ranked 528 nationally by 247 Sports, but you're talking about a guy at one of the premier programs in the country with legit tools at the position. So to me, man, to say he's not a top 500 prospect in the country is pretty crazy to me, just watching the clips and knowing the athletic profile.
Wisconsin, look, for a program that sent a lot of guys to the pros, they're never getting the 5 stars. I think the only guy they got was really highly rated was Graham Mertz, who did a transfer into Florida. So this is more in line what they get, which is guys with talent, guys with traits, really at every position is what they do, right? Even Jonathan Taylor was not the highest ranked player, but he was a track guy. He had the size. They like to get guys with physical traits and develop them. That goes across regimes there in Wisconsin. And I think that's what you have here. You do see throwing talent as well.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think this is.
Look at him change the arm angle there.
We've seen, Pete, so many times. If you look at the majority of quarterbacks in the NFL that are really the stars, let's just talk about the star quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. Let's say those are the 4 best. Let's throw Jalen Hurts in there as well. Just won the Super Bowl. Those 5. All 5 of those guys had serious passing questions coming out of high school. None of them were polished passers out of high school. They were all 3 stars. I believe Burrow was like a borderline 3-4, depending on the publication. Hurts was a 4-star, but Hurts running quarterback coming out. Lamar definitely running. Burrow more of a basketball player. Urban Meyer always tells a story about he couldn't throw half as good as Dwayne Haskins when he got him. And then, of course, Mahomes, 3-star, Josh Allen, no star. When you get these athletic guys with ability and you see the sidearm, of course, you see the running, a lot of times they can be developed into big-time passers as long as they have the raw athleticism, the raw arm talent, and the right demeanor. So when I look at this kid, I see somebody who's kind of a ball of clay. He's got to gain some weight. Now it's going to be cold up there, but look at the physicality, willing to put his shoulder down. That'll do well in Camp Randall. I just think he's the kind of guy that is a developmental player, but the right kind of player to take based on what we know about quarterbacks, based on the fact that if you need a solid guy to get you through a season, you can always go to the transfer portal. I would rather take swings on players like this who can develop as passers like the best quarterbacks in the league have done. Not saying he's going to do that, but I'm saying if they can do it and be the best players in the entire sport, other guys can do it to different degrees. I think he can develop. And I like the approach from Wisconsin and Luke Fickell to bet on trades.
Yeah, without a doubt. And he is commitment number 5 for this Wisconsin class right now, 39th ranked in the country on the composite. Again, bread and butter is not always the high-rated recruiting classes for Wisconsin, but you'd imagine getting your quarterback in the fold now, you could probably see a trickle of some commits coming soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we mentioned Luke Fickell. What did he do at Cincinnati? Evaluate. Desmond Ritter was forget about what he did in the pros. He was a pro, which is a win if you're talking about recruiting. But to lead Cincinnati to the playoff and have all the success he had there, that was also a developmental guy, athlete. I think he was a basketball player as well. So that was a developmental type of player. And I could see, I'm not saying comping, Hopkins to Ritter. I'm just saying that type of guy that develops that as a passer over time and uses his athleticism to get you out of games and manage games. I think it makes sense with what we know about Coach Fickell.
All right, so let's move on to what's been the biggest story in college football and college sports. I would say the last week here sparked a lot of debate, but it's done now. Nico Iamaleava has left Tennessee, and look, we can talk about the circumstances under how this happened. We got into a pretty good discussion about it the other day. So if you want to see that video, go back to our last video on the page. But what we're going to do here is kind of look at potential landing spots for him. I think it has to be a very specialized case wherever he lands because of, look, I think publicly the perception hasn't been great bringing him into the locker room. It needs to be a certain type of situation, maybe a bit of desperation, I would say, by whoever takes him. Not that I don't think he's a talented player, but again, at this juncture, you're bringing your starting quarterback or what you would perceive to be your starting quarterback. So let's take a look at some of these potential landing spots, D.
Yeah, my favorite, hands down, would be North Carolina with Bill Belichick. Maybe that's just me trying to get the biggest story, but I really think this makes a lot of sense, and I'll explain why. It's funny. We remember Bill Belichick when he was in New England. It was all about limiting distractions. But now that he's in college, I think it's the opposite. He wants attention, maybe following the Deion model to a degree, knowing that you got to recruit, you got to convince guys to come to your school. So attention is advertising, it's marketing. That doesn't help you for the New England Patriots. Like, promoting the Patriots doesn't help the Patriots, right? Because you're going to draft, free agency doesn't matter. But recruiting is about attention. So I think Belichick is very much focused on splash, attention. You saw his girlfriend walking around spring practice in high heels. I don't know if that video went viral. So this one, who put the crystal ball in?
Brennan Sonnen from Florida State. This was 30 minutes ago. Just put this in. So this is live right now. And Florida State, a team, spoiler alert, that we'll mention here as a potential landing spot. But I think that's the first crystal ball prediction there for him.
This would be my prediction as well, just because it makes sense. You heard Cooper Tanya mention this on 247, which is, from a PR standpoint, Nico's name's a little bit tarnished right now because of the way this whole thing went down. Go to Bill Belichick. He could say, hey, I'm with a Super Bowl coach. He's going to develop me as a pro. You could justify it from his standpoint. Obviously, Belichick kind of cleans up his image, let's say, by bringing him in. So from that standpoint, it makes sense. And they really were in the portal market for a quarterback. We know that. They brought in Ryan Brown from Purdue, originally from close to our neck of the woods here in the west coast of Southern Florida. But that's not a proven player. He's only started a couple games, shown flashes, but this is not a long-time starter. Of course, anytime you talk about the quarterback situation with UNC, you got to talk about Bryce Baker, their top prospect, super athletic basketball player, high 4-star prospect. They already did the edit.
Or already got edits. I bet you if I search his name with some of these other schools, we'll get edits as well, though.
Billy Tuesday, appreciate you joining us. We'll talk Buckeyes in a second here. He says, Nico brings a lot of noise and scrutiny with him. Could see most programs not want to deal with it. I agree with that totally. USC, Notre Dame, they're not on our list. They were natural fits. I don't think they're going to go in that direction because of what you're explaining, Billy. But I think UNC, when you see the 20-year-old girlfriend in high heels, when they're trying to get on Hard Knocks, when they're on McAfee every other day, they're trying to drum up attention. They're more similar. It's crazy how crazy is the world, Pete? UNC is more similar to Deion in Colorado than anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
So with
that
Bill
Lil
Belichick,
Wayne at practice the other day.
there you go. So I think UNC fits there. I think the one thing you got to balance is this going to scare off a Bryce Baker? But if Nico's probably trying to be one and done anyways, he's eligible. So 1 year Nico, transition to Bryce Baker, that can make sense. They're going to spend money. They sniffed around on Mateer. We heard about that. They more than sniffed around on Mateer. They did a big push for Mateer. I think they sniffed around on Mendoza as well, which I thought was a pretty natural fit as well. But Nico, to me, to UNC, makes a lot of sense. You could have a run-based kind of offense where he's, doing similar to what you did in Tennessee, or probably more likely if you're paying him a lot of money, you say,
let him air it out. Yeah.
We need you to throw. And then he is able to throw. We've got ACC defenses against him. He can.
I was going to say, look, I'm not saying he's Cam Ward, but we saw what Cam Ward was able to do against ACC defenses pretty consistently last year. So I think I would probably think they're going to let him throw it around a bit more than he did at Tennessee.
Yeah. And Carson Beck just made a similar move, right? Going from the SEC to the ACC, going to face different competition, a little easier competition there. So this fit, I love. I think it should happen. I don't know if it will happen, but to me, this is where Nico should go. You go Nico to Bryce Baker. I mean, talk about showtime in Chapel Hill, man. They got a lot of size in the portal. We talked about it when we talked about their portal approach. I think they could use some sizzle, right? Just some impact kind of guys. They got some guys on defense that I like. Love House. Love some of the offensive linemen that they've been able to bring in, Daniel King and some other guys. But they need some sizzle, some offensive sizzle. You've had some of the best quarterbacks in the ACC in recent years between Howell, then Drake May. Let's get Nico on board and put the cameras on, let the fireworks go. I like this fit.
All right, a couple more options here for him potentially. Let's talk about Florida State, who brought in obviously Thomas Castellanos in the offseason from Boston College, more of a running type. In a Gus Malzahn offense, you expect him to be pretty effective in that scheme, but I think Nico would give you a different element in the passing game.
Yeah, we've seen FSU go the portal route lately. They struggled in quarterback recruiting. Luke Kromenhoek was their big quarterback bullet from a high school standpoint. He ends up going to Mississippi State. So they're living in the portal world. Brought in DJU last year, didn't work out. My personal opinion, that was more to do with what FSU had around him than him himself. Not that he's a world beater, number one five-star prospect that he was billed at, but I think he was more like what you saw at Oregon State than what you saw at FSU. He didn't have enough around him. Kane's cat, he threw a 5. Not a big fan of Luke Kromenhoek. I thought he had talent, man. Let's see how he develops. But
it looks like he's losing that job right now, Mississippi State.
Is he really?
Yeah,
maybe
Kane's, what I read the other
Kane's
day.
cat could be right on that one. But Kromenhoek was a safety in high school. He had he was less reps as a quarterback needed to develop. Either way, FSU, DJU didn't work. Now you got Castellanos. I heard he's not really tearing it up. It's hard to tell because FSU keeps those practices so tight, but the word out there, based on what you saw with some of the inconsistencies, is that Castellanos is not necessarily a Jordan Travis, at least at this stage.
Oh, and we talked about if it's going to be a team, there has to be maybe a sense of desperation. And I would say that there's a bit of that right now from Mike Norvell in Florida State.
Fan base could use some juice. There's a lot going on here. To me, you add a Nico, same thing we just talked about, SEC to ACC. Probably ask him to air it out. It makes some sense. The problem with Florida State, I think, on this fit, which is why I like UNC as a better fit. He could say, I'm going to play with Bill Belichick. He coached the greatest quarterback of all time. I want to be a pro-style passer. I want to be a pro. Let me throw the ball. You go to FSU, it's Gus Malzahn, right? You are going to be much more similar to what you had at Tennessee, which he said he didn't like that offense. And I don't think the talent around him is going to be what he had at Tennessee last year, certainly not from a running game standpoint. So you go to Florida State, and now you're handing it off a lot. You're playing not necessarily a pro-style offense. You yourself are running probably more than you like. He's capable of doing it. But to me, I think it makes a lot of sense for Florida State. If I'm Florida State, I'm putting my money down trying to get Nico and add him. I think it'd make a huge difference on the team. But if I'm Nico, I probably want to throw the ball more than what he's doing.
Next school here that's a potential fit, SMU. They brought in Tyler Van Dyke in the offseason, may not be ready for the season. Kevin Jennings, of course, had some good moments for them last year, but inconsistencies, I would say. Why does this fit make sense to you with Rhett Lashlee at the helm?
This was actually brought up by, I want to say, Andrew Ivins. It was on the Ivins Patania podcast. I had not thought of it because Kevin Jennings did a really nice job last year. Obviously had the tough game against Penn State in the playoff. But once he brought it up, it made sense when you think about it. Some similar issues to what we saw with Florida State, right? As far as, is it the offense you necessarily want to develop in for the pros? I think if you look at what SMU has done, Lashlee's done maybe more with passing quarterbacks than Malzahn has, right? TVD, when he was at Miami with Rhett Lashlee, put up huge numbers, really was on the radar as an NFL draft prospect. Jennings passed a lot better than I think people expected this year. So 3 ACC schools, a third ACC school. So that SEC to ACC conversion that Beck did, that's another factor here with this fit. Better team probably last year than UNC and FSU. They were in the ACC championship, obviously in the playoff, but the opponents are going to be a little weaker. Dallas, they got money at SMU. They might want to make a splash. Jennings had that tough playoff game. Maybe they say that Nico will put us over the top to win the ACC, win a playoff game, maybe get an easier playoff game if we win the ACC. I could see it from SMU's perspective, even though they have capable options there. Nico, similar questions to what you had at Florida State from an offensive fit standpoint, in my opinion. I would go in a much more pro-style direction if I am Nico, just both for PR to say, hey, this is why, I didn't leave Tennessee because they didn't pay me. I left Tennessee because I didn't want to run this offense. Is that true? No. I mean, Joe Milton's in the pros. Hendon Hooker's in the pros. I don't think that's really much. There's much to that, but there's a PR game to be played. Nico's stock right now publicly, not football-wise, but just in terms of what people say about him, is not where he wants it to be. So UNC, I think, is the easiest path to rebuild. SMU, I think, is a better fit than FSU because the team's at a higher place. They were just in the ACC championship game, but similar concerns with the offensive style.
And then the last team here, I think they've been pretty heavily rumored, and that's UCLA.
Yeah, look, obviously it's closer to home, right? USC was mentioned a ton. Now he goes potentially to a school in the same city, a school that probably has less competition.
Cachet,
yeah, less cachet, but less competition at quarterback. I mean, Jaden Maiava, who's another Polynesian quarterback,
is good.
It's pretty good, right? I thought he was actually better than Nico last year on terms of the production. They were both kind of inconsistent. Nico, a more talented player, I would say, just because of the pure twitch and arm strength and just natural talent. Although Maiava is not exactly a slouch in the talent department. But that's like a more of a true quarterback battle. You could see a situation where they might want Maiava over Nico. And then when you added all the other stuff off the field, I think USC probably said we're good. UCLA, you got Tino Sunseri. I know that's a hire that they are extremely excited about, over $1 million. So if you're Deshaun Foster, you say, okay, we got a new up-and-coming, very highly valued offensive coordinator, a guy that did a really, really nice job at Indiana, pro-style type passing game. Joey Aguilar, that's your guy. Maybe you're excited about him, but you're not excited as you would be with a Nico. I think if you're in a conference like the Big Ten and you don't have other bullets where you say, hey, we have this great defense or this incredible skill position, I mean, you need something to kind of give you a chance against these more talented teams. Nico unleashed, playing free, hometown, having fun, throwing the ball around with a very, very, very good offensive coordinator. Aside from UNC, I think this is the best fit. The only difference between this fit and UNC is I think Big Ten, you're talking about much tougher competition defensively than the ACC, but it makes a lot of sense both personally in terms of going back to the West Coast and then football-wise because you're going to walk right into the starting job and you're going to have a coordinator that is a passing-focused coordinator that can really elevate your game.
So got a couple more topics to get here, D, before we wrap up. I know we both have to hop off here in a few minutes, but we're going to get into this week. The portal officially opens Wednesday. So, of course, we're going to break down the actual entries once guys make decisions. all that good stuff. But wanted to take a look at, and we're going to do this throughout the week, the top portal needs for some of the top programs in the country. We understand that championships are going to be won or lost here in this period. Essentially, obviously, it's all the last months leading up to this is all important in roster building. But right now, teams, especially these top 5 to 10 teams that all feel like they have a chance to compete for a title, more teams than that probably with the playoff system now, but they want to put these final touches on their roster, fill these final holes. And we're going to start here with the Ohio State Buckeyes, reigning national champions. And there's been a lot of change there this offseason, coaching staff-wise, new quarterback. How do you kind of see them putting the final touches on this roster here?
2 words, man. Defensive line. I think that is priority 1, 2, 3 for Ohio State. They had a great portal season, I thought, as far as adding difference-making players, guys that are going to make a big impact on this team, whether it's tight end position, the running back position. I just think they've added impact players to make sure that their offense continues to run smoothly. Julian Saint had an unbelievable spring. Great spring game, looked accurate, looked like he's separating himself in that battle. So quarterback, you feel good about him. And I think he's got good weapons around him. Of course, best player in the country, good place to start. Plus Carnell Tate, another good weapon, and Brandon Inniss. They got plenty of guys on offense. Defensive line, that was, of course, a monster strength for Ohio State last year. Jack Sawyer, you saw what he was able to do. Really, Tyleik Williams, I thought he was unreal in the playoff run. You had a lot of talent, as we'll find out here in the NFL draft when JTT gets drafted high, 1st and 2nd round, Jack Sawyer 1st and 2nd round, Tyleik Williams 1st and 2nd round, Ty Hamilton, he'll get drafted as well. So you lost a ton. You bring back Caden Curry, a maniacal motor guy, a guy I think is going to help the culture of the room. Edric Houston moving from that 5-star edge to sounds like a 290-pound now, 3 technique, who's going to be able to get the pass rush in there. You like what you have there. Kenyatta Jackson, someone, Pete, we've been watching since he was down here in Broward County in Florida. Super talented, always been sort of your prototypical defensive end from a size, speed, athleticism standpoint. He's starting to come on. I'm sure he feels like it's his time now as a redshirt junior. Logan George, I didn't mention, from Idaho State, portal guy, pleasant surprise. But I think you need more. You lost Hero Kanu to Texas. Mitchell Melton, who played a little bit at 2 sacks, 3.5 tackles for loss last season. Big edge, guy that gave you some size out there. He goes to Virginia. So you've lost those guys on top of what you lost to the draft. You need bodies. This is not just a position where you line up 4 guys and play ball. Even when you have 4 NFL guys like Ohio State, you are still rotating, keeping guys fresh. This is a spot to me where I think they can make major, major improvements.
The other program wanted to get into today here was the Georgia Bulldogs. Talk about a team with a lot of turnover, lots of new weapons offensively, new quarterback as Carson Beck is at Miami now, Gunnar Stockton taking over there. The depth in that room, may not be the strongest right now. Could you see them going after another quarterback right now?
Oh, look, Pete Nakos, who's plugged in with agents and front offices like no one else when it comes to the portal, he said this: keep an eye on Georgia and quarterbacks. We know they went after Fernando Mendoza, at least explored that. I thought that was a good fit potentially. Gunnar Stockton, great spring. He's going to be the guy. It's going to be a Gunnar Stockton show. At least he'll have a chance to be the guy. Behind him, Puglisi, Montgomery, who's a big physical pro-style passer, Hezekiah Millender. So not a lot of experience in the room. Even Gunnar Stockton himself does not have a lot of experience. The room in total, 83 collegiate passes, all coming from Gunnar Stockton. So I think quarterback depth, something to watch. Also, running back. You lose at the end. You've recruited well at that position. Chauncey Bowens showed a little bit of flashes, signs of life there in the spring game, but you need more at running back. This is the Georgia Bulldogs. This is, Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, right? This is a program that's prided himself on running the ball. You saw that running game drop to the hundreds last year. I don't think that is Georgia football. Truthfully, I don't think the running game has been where Georgia wants it to be for a while. And look, they won 2 national championships. You had a running quarterback. The running game was obviously very effective. But if I'm a Georgia fan, I'm thinking Sony and Chubb. That's where I'm aiming. And multiple NFL backs at the same time. McIntosh was a good back. But again, if I'm Georgia, I want studs at running back. So if a stud running back comes available in the portal, I could see Georgia making a move there. Or if it's just depth, I could see them going there as well. They're continuing to recruit top running backs. But when you're ranked in the hundreds in running, and I think we talked a lot about Carson Beck and Hunter Stockton last year, just as far as that dynamic. Talked a lot about the receivers leading the nation in drops. Offensive line maybe underperforming from a pass blocking standpoint. The running game was a problem for Georgia last year. We don't talk about that enough. Georgia football cannot rank in the hundreds in running. Come on, guys. What are we talking about here? I think running back is an area to watch. And then also pass rush, Pete. I know you're a huge fan of Damon Wilson, who went to Missouri. That's an area where I can see them adding guys.
Yeah, and I mean, NACO says that they're going to be aggressive adding multiple guys potentially. So that, is that a bit of a concern to you? I would say if you're looking to add multiple guys at a premier position. Now it's Georgia. They could flip that quickly. I think they potentially did with the receivers room, but yeah, that's a premier position. I need 2 guys there at that spot at this juncture. If you're Georgia, again, it's Georgia we're talking about here, who has been producing these guys pretty easily over the past 5-6 years. So, yeah, that's one to watch, I would think.
Yeah, because, I mean, look what you lost. Wright Williams, he's going to be a first-round pick. Jalen Walker, kind of a combo edge off ball, but he brought a lot of pass rush value. He's out the door. Wilson, who I think everybody expected. This was the shocker of the portal season to me, really, was Wilson going to Missouri because he was
next in line.
He was next in line. He was there to be the guy.
Played already.
I didn't understand. I still don't understand it aside from the financial part of it. But that happened. It's gone. The money that you could have spent on him is now available to spend. You did lose. You lost Mpemba, right? He was out the door as someone who, it's not like he was a dynamic player in terms of what he had done on the field, but you had him, you developed him. Now he goes to Texas A&M, so you lose depth in that way. I think they could. And then whoever the top defensive end on the market is, I think Georgia is going to make a claim there. You saw Texas Tech with Bailey from Stanford. That was a pretty big piece that was taken off the board. Texas Tech, you got to imagine the big spenders on the block, which is crazy. We're talking Texas Tech and Georgia. We're talking about Texas Tech being the big spenders. But I think they're kind of out of it now with the money they've spent. A lot of teams have other needs.
Listen, man, don't double eagle energy, man. Don't you say that they might want to start spending again.
Listen, you never count them out. We could have mentioned them in the Nico video too, yeah. Although I think they're probably tapped out. But if I'm Georgia, whoever the top defensive end is on the market, we talked about Ohio State a second ago, was also in the market for defensive linemen. But I think whoever the top defensive end is on the market, you're the Georgia Bulldogs. Go out and get him. You've been recruited like crazy. You got great roster. But if you're going to compete with some of these teams that you're going to have to play, right? Look, Arch Manning's going to get this thing going pretty soon. Alabama's passing game looked better than I thought in the spring. LSU with Nussmeier is going to be throwing all over the yard. Whoever you play in the SEC and the SEC championship, ultimately in the playoff, you got to get to the passer, and you've lost so much pass rush juice. You got to rebuild that with not just bodies, but Georgia caliber pass rushers. And there might only be one that enters the portal that is at that caliber. We don't know who it is yet, but whoever that name is, that's over the line of what can make an impact for Georgia football, I think you got to go and get him.
All right, everyone. Appreciate you all for joining us today live. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Keep it locked all week, all month here on Group Chat Football Live, because it's going to be crazy. The portal is back open this week, and we'll keep you guys updated. Thank you all for watching. I see you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.